Troy Lawson just told an $85 million private equity team that I was obsolete. He used words like legacy processes and outdated systems and time for fresh blood. Said it with that McKinsey confidence, the kind you get from a Wharton MBA and a golf handicap that opens doors. Problem was, Wade Sullivan's team had spent 6 weeks analyzing the supply chain optimization I'd built over 12 years. 240 vendors consolidated to 67, 34% cost reduction, 12 million in annual savings that showed up in every quarterly report. And my last name wasn't actually Brennan. The name's Liam. I'm 50 years old and I was about to watch Troy learn what happens when you try to steal credit for someone else's work right before the biggest deal in company history. I was halfway through my presentation when he kicked open the conference room door. Not knocked, not entered quietly. Kicked it open like he was in some corporate action movie. He had his tablet out, already loaded with slides. Probably cost more to design than my annual operations budget. "Gentlemen," he said, addressing the 6 people from the PE firm like I wasn't standing at the head of the table. "I appreciate what Liam's done here. Really, I do, but let's be honest about where we are." He tapped his tablet. His Tag Heuer golf watch caught the light. "The systems are legacy. The processes are outdated. We're bringing in Deloitte to modernize everything. Sometimes you need fresh eyes and fresh strategy." He still wasn't looking at me. "Liam's been here too long. I've already discussed transition planning with our chief people officer. This is the kind of bold move that shows we're serious about growth post-acquisition." The room went completely silent. Wade Sullivan, the lead partner, stopped writing mid-sentence. His Mont Blanc pen hovered above his notepad where he'd been taking notes on my vendor consolidation analysis. His associate, Rachel Torres, looked up from her laptop. The other 4 investors just watched. I didn't say anything. Learned a long time ago that competent people don't need to defend themselves. The numbers do it for you. Troy kept going. "We'll transition Liam's responsibilities to the consulting team. Clean break. Professional. I think everyone here understands that acquisitions require difficult decisions." That's when the door opened again. Patrick Callahan walked in. 72 years old. Built this company from a machine shop into a $400 million enterprise. Every person in that room sat straighter without thinking about it. He walked over to me and put a hand on my shoulder. Not protective. Not aggressive. Just there. "Liam," he said quietly, "continue with the vendor consolidation section." Wade's team asked for that specifically. Troy's face shifted. The confident smirk cracked. Patrick turned to the investors. "Liam Brennan designed every operational system you've been analyzing. His father, Neil Brennan, was my business partner for 20 years. Neil taught his son to build things that last." He glanced at Troy. "Unlike some people who confuse PowerPoint slides with actual performance." Wade Sullivan leaned forward. His pen was completely still now. "You're Neil Brennan's son?" I nodded. Wade looked at Patrick, then back at me. "The Neil Brennan who designed the original procurement system we've been evaluating?" "That's right," Patrick said. "Neil built half this company with me. His son's been finishing that work for 12 years. Troy tried to recover. "Patrick, I was simply suggesting we explore." Patrick raised one finger. Not aggressive, not loud, just one finger about shoulder height. The room went dead silent. "Troy, Diane." He didn't turn to look at Diane Palmer, our chief people officer, who'd been standing in the back with her tablet ready. Probably had termination paperwork already drafted. "Outside, now." It wasn't a suggestion. Troy blinked. Diane made a small noise halfway between a cough and a protest. Neither of them moved. Patrick's voice dropped 10 degrees. "Now." Troy walked out first, trying to maintain dignity. Diane followed, her heels clicking on marble. The door closed with a soft click. Patrick turned back to Wade's team like nothing had happened. "Liam will continue. I think you'll find the vendor consolidation analysis particularly relevant. 240 suppliers reduced to 67 while maintaining 0 supply chain disruptions." He squeezed my shoulder once, walked to the back of the room, and sat down. Wade Sullivan stared at me for a long moment. Then he flipped back through his notepad, scanning previous pages. Started nodding slowly. "Continue," he said. "So I did. 12 years ago, my father died. Patrick Callahan showed up at the funeral. Dad and Patrick had started the company together in a rented warehouse. 3 employees, 1 broken lathe. Dad handled manufacturing and operations. Patrick handled sales and finance. Together, they built something real. At the reception, Patrick pulled me aside. "Your father talked about you constantly, said you had his eye for systems." I was 38 then, working as an operations manager at a distributor, fixing other people's problems. "I'd like to offer you a position," Patrick said. "But you'll use your mother's name. Brennan. You'll start as a senior analyst. Nobody knows who you are. If you're half as good as Neil, you'll earn your reputation. If you're not, I won't carry you." "Fair," I said. "When you prove yourself, people will learn who you really are, but you'll have earned it first." So I became Liam Brennan, not Liam Callahan. For 12 years, I kept my head down and built systems, redesigned vendor onboarding, cut approval time from 43 days to 9, consolidated suppliers, negotiated better contracts, implemented automated procurement tracking. Every quarter, margins improved. Every year, costs dropped while output increased. I didn't take credit in meetings, didn't send victory emails, just did the work and watched the numbers move. Troy Lawson showed up 4 years ago, Vice President of Sales and Business Development, McKinsey background, Wharton MBA, a golf game that gave him access to 3 board members who thought he was brilliant. He was everything the board wanted, charismatic, connected, full of ideas about strategic pivots and market disruption. He brought in deals. Big deals, exciting deals. The fact that his deals had 8% margins while my operational improvements generated 34% margins didn't seem to matter. Troy had energy. I had spreadsheets. 2 years ago, Troy started dating Diane Palmer, our chief people officer. Diane was sharp and political, very good at weaponizing HR policy. She'd climbed fast by making problems disappear using phrases like culture fit and organizational alignment. Together, Troy and Diane became untouchable. They started small, reallocating budget from operations to sales initiatives, hiring preferred vendors without proper vetting, expense reports that looked fine on the surface but made no sense if you actually checked. I noticed patterns. Vendor approvals bypassing normal channels, consulting contracts with companies that had no employees, calendar overlaps where Troy and Diane attended industry conferences at resort destinations. So I started documenting, not for revenge. I've worked in manufacturing and operations my entire career. You don't let defects pass through the system just because fixing them is uncomfortable. I kept everything off company devices, personal laptop, encrypted files, physical copies in a locked drawer at home. Every invoice, every approval, every suspicious pattern. The evidence was damning. Over 24 months, Troy had approved $2.8 million in vendor payments to 14 different companies. 9 of those companies traced back to his personal network. Summit Strategy Partners was his college roommate. Apex Business Solutions was his golf buddy. Meridian Consulting Group was registered to his brother-in-law's address with 0 employees. Diane enabled all of it, waived 31 background checks, approved 23 executive exceptions to bypass audit triggers, even pressured a junior analyst on my team to backdate invoices. Sarah Walsh, 26 years old. Terrified, I found her crying in the stairwell one afternoon. She'd refused to backdate a consulting invoice, and Diane had called her into HR for a discussion about corporate realities and career trajectory. That's when I knew this wasn't just about money. It was about power, about people like Troy and Diane building empires on other people's fear. I had Slack messages, email chains, calendar records, bank routing numbers, everything an auditor would need. But I didn't turn it in. In political organizations, whistleblowers get destroyed. The system protects people like Troy and Diane. They're connected. They're liked. They bring in revenue. You can't beat them by following proper channels. You beat them by making them irrelevant. So I waited, built my systems, made myself indispensable. And when Patrick started talking to private equity firms about a potential acquisition, I knew the moment was coming. PE firms don't care about charisma. They care about margins, systems, proof the business can run without the founders. Wade Sullivan's team spent 6 weeks analyzing every aspect of Callahan Industries. They loved the operational efficiency, loved the consistent margins, loved the vendor consolidation and procurement automation. They kept asking to meet the person who designed these systems. Troy kept deflecting, said it was a team effort, said he'd implemented these improvements as part of his strategic vision. That's when he decided to make his move. Bring in Deloitte. Restructure operations. Take credit for 12 years of my work right as the acquisition was closing. He just forgot to check who my father was. After Patrick walked Troy and Diane out of the conference room, I finished my presentation. Wade Sullivan and his team asked detailed questions, real questions, the kind that showed they understood what they were looking at. At the end, Wade closed his notebook. "I've been doing this for 30 years, he said. Analyzed hundreds of companies. You know what kills deals? When the revenue looks good, but operations are garbage. When sales brings in business, the company can't deliver." He looked at Patrick, then back at me. "Troy sells, you deliver. We're buying delivery." Patrick smiled. Didn't say anything. I'd like to speak with Liam privately, Wade said. Rachel, let's take a break. Everyone else reconvene in an hour. Once the room cleared, Wade sat across from me. I used to be a COO, Fortune 500 industrial company. Spent 20 years building operational systems while sales guys took credit. So I recognize what I'm looking at. He pulled a folder from his briefcase. Inside were printouts, vendor contracts, consulting agreements, expense reports. We've been noticing irregularities. Nothing definitive, but patterns. Troy's preferred vendors. Diane's exception approvals. We couldn't get internal documentation because they control access. He slid the folder toward me. You wouldn't happen to have documentation that might clarify these patterns? I pulled out my phone, opened an encrypted folder, shared the link. 64 pages. Every invoice, every approval, every vendor traced to sources. All time-stamped. All verified. Wade opened it on his tablet, started scrolling. His jaw tightened, but his expression stayed neutral. After 3 minutes, he looked up. How long have you known? 2 years of active documentation. Noticed patterns 6 months before that. Why didn't you report it? To who? Diane runs HR. Troy has 3 board members in his pocket. I report it. They bury it. And suddenly I'm the one with performance issues. Wade nodded slowly. So you waited until someone was watching who actually cared about the truth. He closed the tablet. We're freezing diligence, not canceling, just pausing until this gets resolved. That creates pressure. Troy and Diane will panic. Things might get ugly. I know, you're sure? Once this file goes to the board and our legal team, there's no walking it back. I thought about Sarah Walsh in that stairwell. Thought about 12 years watching smooth talkers climb while competent people got overlooked. I'm sure. Wade stood and extended his hand. I've fired 20 Troy types in my career. I've promoted 3 Liams. Send that file to our compliance team and to Patrick. We'll handle the rest. The board meeting happened 48 hours later. Emergency session. All directors present. Patrick at the head of the table. Troy and Diane sitting together on the left side, confident because they didn't know what was coming. The head of audit, Dana Worth, stood at the projector with a laptop and a stack of printed documents. Patrick nodded once. Dana started. This is a forensic review of vendor payments and HR exception approvals over the past 24 months. The documentation comes from multiple sources, all verified by IT for authenticity. She pulled up the first slide. A vendor payment record. Page 14. Payment to Summit Strategy Partners. Amount, $187,000. Service provided, strategic consulting. Actual deliverable, none documented. She clicked to the next slide. Company registration traces to Marcus Webb. LinkedIn shows Mr. Webb attended Wharton with Troy Lawson. Same graduating class. They're listed as connections. Troy shifted in his seat. That's a legitimate consulting firm. Marcus has... Patrick raised one finger. Troy stopped talking. Dana continued. Page 22. Expense report submitted by Troy Lawson and Diane Palmer. Business purpose, industry conference, Chicago. Hotel charges, Scottsdale Resort. Same dates. Calendar shows both individuals blocked as executive strategy session. She didn't pause. Page 29. Email from Diane Palmer to Sarah Walsh, junior analyst. Quote, we need this invoice approved retroactively. Route it through operations with last quarter's date. Don't make me explain corporate realities again. One of the board members, Victoria Hayes, leaned forward. Is Sarah Walsh still employed here? She transferred to logistics 3 months ago, Dana said. Did she file a complaint? No formal complaint. She told her supervisor she wanted a department change for personal reasons. Victoria wrote something on her notepad. Dana kept going. Page 37. Apex Business Solutions. 6 payments totaling $212,000. Services, leadership development workshops. Company registration, Gerald Chen. Mr. Chen plays golf at the same club as Troy Lawson. They're photographed together in the club newsletter from last spring. She clicked again. Page 41. Meridian Consulting Group. 9 payments totaling $463,000. Registration address, same as the home mortgage of Troy Lawson's brother-in-law, Dennis Palmer. Company has no website, no LinkedIn presence, no employees listed in state business records. Troy stood up. This is selective interpretation. You're taking normal business relationships and... Sit down, Patrick said. Not loud, just final. Troy sat. Dana pulled up a spreadsheet. Total questionable vendor payments, $2.8 million over 24 months. All approved by Troy Lawson. All bypassed standard procurement review through executive exceptions granted by Diane Palmer. She turned to face the board directly. Additionally, Diane Palmer waived 31 background checks for contractors and vendors associated with these companies. She approved 23 executive exceptions that would normally trigger automatic legal review. IT forensics confirm all documentation is authentic. Timestamps verified through our cloud backup system. Alan Murphy, another director, spoke up. What's the investor situation? Patrick answered. Wade Sullivan's team has frozen their diligence process pending resolution of these issues. If this looks like fraud during an $85 million acquisition, we're not just losing the deal. We're looking at SEC scrutiny and reputation damage that will follow us for years. The room was quiet. Not shocked quiet. More like jury coming to verdict quiet. Victoria Hayes looked at Troy and Diane. Do you have a response to these findings? Troy stood again, slower this time. He'd lost the McKinsey confidence. These are legitimate business expenses. Some of the vendors are people I know personally. Yes, but that's how business works. Relationships matter. The consulting services were real. Maybe the documentation isn't perfect, but that's a process issue, not fraud. Victoria turned to Diane. And the background check waivers? Diane's voice was steady but tight. Those were judgment calls made in the interest of operational efficiency. We have executive discretion protocols for exactly these situations. I followed policy. You waived 31 background checks, Victoria said, for vendors tied to your boyfriend's college friends and family members. That's not judgment. That's enabling. Diane's face went pale. Troy tried again. Look, I've brought in $40 million in revenue over 4 years. My client relationships, your relationships cost us 8% margins, Patrick said. Liam's systems generate 34% margins. Your revenue means nothing if we can't deliver it profitably. He looked at the board. We have two options. We clean house now and show the investors we have operational integrity. Or we protect Troy and Diane, lose the acquisition, and spend the next 2 years explaining to shareholders why we chose politics over performance. Victoria didn't hesitate. Motion to terminate Troy Lawson for cause and suspend Diane Palmer pending legal review. Second, Alan Murphy said. All in favor? Every hand went up. Patrick turned to Troy and Diane. Security will escort you to HR. Your system access is revoked immediately. Legal will contact you regarding restitution and potential criminal referral. Troy's voice cracked. Patrick, we can work this out. I'll pay back whatever you think is questionable. This doesn't need to be ugly. Patrick's expression didn't change. It became ugly when you pressured a 26-year-old analyst to commit fraud because you needed to hide your incompetence. He nodded toward the door. 2 security officers in dark polos stood waiting. We're done here. Troy and Diane walked out, not escorted dramatically, just walked. The door closed behind them. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was clean, like pressure releasing from a sealed room. Patrick looked at me. The board voted on something else while you were out. Effective immediately, you're president and chief operating officer. Board seat comes with it. 6% equity from my founder shares. I stared at him. Patrick, this isn't charity. This is what should have happened 3 years ago. Your father and I built this company on operational excellence. Troy almost destroyed it with charisma and connections. The board needs to remember what matters. He stood and walked to the window. You could hear the manufacturing floor through the glass. Machinery humming. People working. Neil would be proud, Patrick said quietly. Not because you took down Troy, because you built something worth protecting. 2 weeks later, Wade Sullivan's team resumed diligence. They cleared us in 4 days. The closing dinner was at a steakhouse downtown. Dark wood, quiet conversations. The kind of place where deals get signed over whiskey that costs more than most people's car payments. Patrick and I walked in together. Wade stood when we approached. His team was already seated. Rachel Torres. 3 other partners I'd been introduced to during diligence. Wade shook Patrick's hand, then mine. Liam, glad you could make it as COO and not just operations guy. Feels strange, I said. It shouldn't. You earned it about 10 years ago. Just took everyone else a while to notice. We sat. Servers moved around us like choreographed dancers. Menus appeared. Wine was poured. I didn't look at the menu. Wasn't really hungry. Wade didn't look at his wine. He looked at me. You know what I've learned doing this for 30 years? Revenue is easy. Any charismatic guy with good hair and a golf game can bring in deals. Troy brought in deals. He leaned back, but delivery is hard. Making those deals actually profitable. Building systems that work when the charismatic guy is on vacation or quits or gets fired for fraud. That's rare, Rachel Torres spoke up. We see Troy types constantly. They're a dime a dozen. McKinsey, BCG, Bain. They all sound the same. Same buzzwords, same energy, same 8% margins. Wade nodded. We've seen 3 people like you in 15 years. People who actually build things that last. Who make companies work instead of just making them look good. Patrick raised his glass. To Liam, who spent 12 years proving that competence beats charisma every time. Wade raised his glass toward me. We're not buying revenue projections. We're buying the man who makes revenue possible. I didn't make a speech, just raised my glass and nodded. The servers brought food. Steak, sides. The kind of meal that's more about the ritual than the eating. Halfway through, Rachel leaned over. Can I ask you something? Sure, why didn't you go to Patrick years ago? With the evidence on Troy? Because it wouldn't have mattered, I said. Troy had board support. Diane controlled HR. Patrick would have believed me, but the board would have protected Troy. They liked him. He brought energy. So you waited for us. I waited for someone who cared about margins more than golf handicaps. She smiled. Smart. Necessary, I said. After dinner, Patrick and I stood outside while the valets brought cars around. Cold night. You could see your breath. Your father would have handled it the same way, Patrick said. He never trusted people who talked more than they built. I remember. He also would have been furious that I let Troy get that far, that I didn't see it earlier. You were running a company. Troy was good at hiding. Patrick shook his head. I got distracted by growth, by the board wanting excitement. I forgot what Neil and I built this company on. What's that? Making things that work, not making things that sound good in presentations. His car arrived. Black sedan, driver waiting. Come by the office tomorrow, Patrick said. We need to talk about the manufacturing expansion in Tennessee. That's your call now, not mine. He got in the car and left. My car came next. I drove home thinking about the last 12 years. All the quiet work. All the systems built while other people took credit. All the times I could have quit or complained or made noise. I thought about Sarah Walsh, who'd transferred to logistics to escape Diane's pressure. About the junior analysts who'd watched Troy get promoted while their actual work got ignored. About my father, who'd spent 20 years building half a company that almost got destroyed by someone who'd only been there 4. When I got home, I poured a drink and sat on the back deck. Cold night, clear sky. My phone buzzed. Email from Wade Sullivan. Contract executed. Closing in 30 days. Board seat paperwork attached. Welcome to the new phase. I opened the attachment. Official documents. President and Chief Operating Officer. Board of Directors. 6% equity. Liam Callahan, not Liam Brennan. My real name. Finally on paper. Finally earned. I thought about calling someone. Celebrating. Making noise about the win. Instead, I finished my drink and went inside. Tomorrow I'd be back in the office. Systems to review. Manufacturing expansion to plan. Teams to build. The real work that nobody sees but everyone depends on. That's what my father taught me. That's what Patrick built his company on. That's what Wade Sullivan's team was actually buying. Not the performance. The work, not the presentation. The results, not Troy Lawson's charisma and connections. The 12 years of systems that actually functioned when tested by people who knew what to look for. I went to bed early. Had a meeting at 7. Manufacturing review. Quality control metrics. Vendor performance analysis. The kind of meeting Troy would have skipped. The kind of work Diane would have called too operational for executives. The kind of work that turns $400 million companies into $800 million companies. The quiet work. The building, the systems. That's what winners do. They build. Then they let the building speak for itself. I didn't need to tell anyone how I won. The P&L did it for me. The margins did it for me. The 67 vendors instead of 240 did it for me. 12 years of documentation. 12 years of competence. 12 years of patience. And one moment when the right people were finally watching. That's all it took. Not revenge, not drama, not public humiliation. Just being better at the actual work than the people who were better at talking about work. Troy Lawson forgot that. Diane Palmer forgot that. The board forgot that until Wade Sullivan's team reminded them what actually matters. I didn't forget. My father didn't forget. Patrick didn't forget. Build things that work. Make them better than they were. Document everything. Wait for the moment when competence matters more than performance. Then let the work speak. The next morning, I walked into the office at 6:30. Manufacturing floor already running. Third shift ending. Day shift starting. Machinery humming. People building things. I grabbed coffee and headed to my new office. Bigger space. Better view. Name on the door, Liam Callahan, President and COO. My real name. Finally visible. Finally earned. I sat down, opened my laptop and started working. Just like the last 12 years. Just like my father did for 20 years before that. Building systems. Making things work. doing the quiet work that nobody notices until someone finally looks close enough to see what's actually holding everything together. That's the game. That's how you win. Not by being the loudest. By being the one still standing when the loud ones burn out. Troy's gone, Diane's gone. The shell vendors are gone. The board members who love Troy's energy are now asking me how we're going to scale operations for the acquisition. And I'm still here, still building, still making things work. Just like always.